What is up, guys and gals? Justin Phillip here. Welcome back to another episode of Dog Times Productions. Before you start hating on me, just hear me out, okay? Both of these are being used Kaipon Bavai's Ultra X0.7 speed boosters. Now, there's a lot of hatred on these lenses, and I understand that. But mine, both of these, I have an M42 to micro four thirds for my vintage Russian Soviets, and I have an EOS EF to micro four third for my Rokinon Cine lenses. Neither of these have any electronics in them. I bought both of these specifically for my manual lenses. One thing I'll say about all the tests out there that are online, the majority of the Kaipon Bavai's speed booster tests that I have found online, they all are the ones with the electronical connections in them. Now, I'm not saying that the all manual ones are better or worse. I don't know. I don't have an electronic one to test against the all manual ones. Another thing I will say about my particular Bavai speed boosters, these are the newest versions. I just got these last year. They're the newest models rolled out on the market. They even have new packaging. So say what you will about these things. I did a video, and I'm going to plug it again, where I compared this particular Kaipon Bavai's Canon EF mount with a Viltrox EF-M2, and the Kaipon achieves infinity focus with the Tokina 11-16 f2.8, whereas that Viltrox has a lot of trouble achieving infinity focus, and not only with the Tokina 11-16, but also with the Tamron 28-75 f2.8. Okay, and I got a lot of hate on that video because people are saying, well, you know, you got to twist the inner element, the glass element of the Viltrox, and you have to do that with metabones, so what's your problem, Justin? And I will say to that, my friends, the Viltrox costs what, $200 brand new? The metabones cost what, $700 brand new? You're telling me you're spending $700 so you can unscrew this glass element and move it where you need it to be? That's really what you're spending $700 on? No. I don't roll like that. I don't buy that. That to me is not good product. Kaipon, I open it up, I put the lens on, I run and go. Guess what? I get the same infinity focus that I do with the Tokina 11mm that I do with a Canon 200mm. And I don't have to twist anything. Now, granted, this is not made for those lenses with all the electronics inside of them, but I didn't buy it for that. So maybe the electronic Bavais are worse than the manual ones. I don't know. First, let's look at the modern world of the Rokinon 35mm Cine lens. Now, you probably already done your own research on these Rokinon Cines. The build quality is not that impressive. I remember the first time I held one of these, especially it was not this exact lens, but it was another 35mm Rokinon Cine lens. And I remember when I picked it up, I was like, oh wow, this is light. It is very light. It's just a hard plastic casing. It is a Canon EF mount. Now, I do really like the smoothness of the focus pulling, and the declicked aperture ring is really, really nice. This is a T1.5 aperture. With this particular 35mm lens, I bought this used. I got a great deal on it. I only paid $200 for this thing. But I will say, because of that, I think that's why the aperture ring isn't quite as smooth as my other Rokinon lenses. Another thing that I have noticed online with the Rokinon Cine lenses is the mounts tend to break off or fall off, I don't know, and that scares me a little bit. So you gotta be kind of delicate with these things, apparently. This is a Canon EF mount. It has 8 aperture blades versus the 10 blades on the Mir 1B. There's 10 blades on the Mir 1B and there's only 8 on the Rokinon. Let's talk about the Mir 1B 37mm f2.8 old screw M42 vintage lens. These things are built like tanks. It's just all metal. It's a little sturdy, cool little lens. And these Russian lenses, these Soviet lenses, especially of this era with the screw mount, this was like Russia's answer to the Zeiss optics at the time. And so they did their best at mimicking the Zeiss lenses. They did a pretty damn good job with it. The cool thing about the Russian lenses is that the iris already comes declicked, but you can turn it, I can turn it, and I can make it clicked. So it's my choice if I want it to be clicked or if I want it to be declicked. And that's a pretty cool option. You don't see that ever. I haven't seen that on any other lenses except these old Soviet lenses. Another cool thing is what you can do with them is I can set a parameter for my iris. So let's say I just want to go from 2.8 to 5.6. Okay, well I can put the red marker on the 5.6, and now my iris only goes from 2.8 to 5.6, and it just stops. It just hits an end mark, and you can't go beyond the 5.6. That's a pretty rad feature, especially considering I got this old lens for less than $100. So as you can see here, I was just using these Christmas lights, and this is a fairly low light setting, and we're just comparing the bokeh of each of these. One thing I will say about the Mir 1B is that the focus pulling is way more stiff than the Rokinon Cine lens, and I'm sure that's because of age, and it's, you know, it's metal, and there's a lot more factors against the vintage lens. But you'll notice it is kind of hard achieving the same kind of big bokeh like what the Rokinon has. And there's a lot of jitteriness in this Russian vintage lens. However, with that being said, I was able to, in this fairly same position, I mean, it wasn't, not every setup was exactly the same, because the Mir 1B is a 37 mil, whereas the Rokinon is a 35 mil. So there is that 2 millimeter difference, which I didn't think would make that big of a difference, but with some of these shots, it actually did. But I will say that with these books, the Mir 1B did a much better job of racking focus from the books to the ukuleles and then to the bokeh out on the Christmas lights there. Whereas the Rokinon kind of had a hard time focusing on the things that were closer. I'm just shooting out on my porch, and wow. Now you'll notice the difference in the wood planks of this garage. The colors are much different on the Mir 1B versus the Rokinon. The Rokinon makes it, you know, it seems like a red barn, but the colors on the Mir 1B are a little more richer in these outdoor settings. The leaves aren't as, it seems like the Rokinon has some chromatic aberrations on these leaves, especially the ones to the far right, whereas the Mir 1B kind of keeps everything nice and sharp on these outdoor shots. Especially on the shingles too. The Mir 1B, the shingles are much more sharper versus the Rokinon. So one example of the difference between the 35 millimeter focal length versus the 37 millimeter focal length is highly noticeable with this Lego shot here. You'll notice the 35 is closer, and that's because with the Mir 1B, I had to back way up just to get these little guys in focus. I think a lot of it too is because of the focal distance range. So with the Rokinon, you can go from 0.3 meters to 3 meters, which in feet is 1 to 10 feet. So 0.3 to 3 meters, whereas this Mir 1B, it starts at 0.7 rather than 0.3. And that is like a pretty big difference. That's the difference between a whole foot, a little over a foot actually. So that's a big difference, the fact that you have to get much further away, whereas the Rokinon, you can get a whole 1.5 feet closer. Okay, so there you have it, folks. A little comparison. The Mir 1B 37mm f2.8 vintage M42 lens versus the Rokinon Cine lens 35mm T1.5. Which do you prefer? I'd love to read your comments, and you guys let me know what you think, and stay tuned for future draws down the line. The next one's going to be the Helios, the infamous Helios 44 58mm versus the Rokinon 50mm Cine lens. So stay tuned for that one. As always, thanks for watching, and catch you on the next one.